Hey, Paul.
Hey Leeroy, how you doing?
I'm all right, fella. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. I'm good.
Can you hear me?
Busy. Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, mate. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, that's fine. The first time of doing this, I've done quite a few recordings now of this, and this is the first time I've had microphone issues when I first started.
Uh, Let me put my headphones in, and then I can get rid of the echo cancellation. It might improve things for. There we go. How's that sound? All right.
Perfect. Yeah.
Let me just improve my white balance a bit. There we go. Sorted.
There we go. I can see you now. How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Good. It's half-term holidays, so I'm dodging between trying not to answer work emails, answering work emails, doing
Right.
work, not doing work, looking after children. It's
Yeah.
fun.
Ours is different. Ours was last week for a half term.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I had that last week.
yeah. A lot of my partners and clients did, and then they've come back to work on all guns blazing this week while I'm off, which is fun.
Right. Ah, there we
No, could you just go away now?
go. Right. So, for anyone that doesn't know you, tell us a bit about yourself. What it is you do.
um, Whistle stop tour.
Yeah.
I spent. I once upon a time I qualified as a software engineer,
Right.
just as the dot com bubble burst back in 2004 2005.
Yeah.
So I put those skills to fantastic good use by joining a call center,
Right.
which is where I met my now wife.
Right.
It's also where I got divorced from my first wife at 21.
Right.
Um, I then realised that there was absolutely no way I could work with my wife permanently
Yeah.
in that sort of environment. So I
Yeah.
left
Yeah.
that environment and went and work in retail. And
Right.
for my sins, I spent 15 years in discount German retail. You can put two and two together and probably come up
Right.
with either four or six, depending on what you're thinking. And that was a bit of a crucible. So I'm self-diagnosed ADHD,
Right.
and that forced me to become very organised, very strategic, and understand what it is that I need to do each day to get things achieved. Because I'm very, very, very focused on shiny objects, and the next
Yeah.
shiny object gets my attention completely. After 15 years, I'd had more than my fill of working either on site in stores or in the admin teams, and I was looking for something new. I was picked up by um, a guy from Manchester who was building a startup, an AI tech startup in Manchester,
Right.
selling conversation analytics and next best action toolkits to enterprise call centers and outsourcers. Very complex, very technical technology. And I have no sales and marketing background. I'm just a guy from retail, right, who understands people. I did 10 years as a volunteer police officer as well, in and amongst all of that.
Right.
Um, and I did incredibly well in that position. I was a solutions consultant, so I did everything from pre-sales right the way through to scope of work and contracts, handing over to the customer success team. As you can imagine, very steep learning curve. I didn't know
Yeah.
what B2B was when I left that retail environment. I had no idea. I had so many questions. But one thing I found that I was really good at was understanding people and building relationships.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the sort of skill set that was needed to reach that sort of very senior leadership team in that position. Um, as part of that role, I was trying to figure out how we reached more of them. How do we build a pipeline? Because cold calling didn't cut it, cold emails didn't cut it. These people are far too senior to be hooked in by that on a regular, like consistent set to be doing any of those things either, like cold calling, cold email. It takes
Yeah.
a very, you need experience and a strategy and a script and all those things. No, I have none of that. What we hit on was using video to do it. So we realized that by doing things like this, podcasts, live streams, we could leverage credibility of influencers in the industry and become much more impactful. Um, and we got to a point where after 18 months of doing that particular tactic, I put over 200 opportunities in their pipeline worth 25 million ARR. Again, no background, no experience, not even in the industry in general, no credibility there
Yeah.
whatsoever. I was leaning on other people. And very, very successful doing that. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And push came to shove. It was time for me to move on and do more of that for other people. So
Hmm.
what we specialize in now is record and repurpose. So how can we help you virtually record video in a minimum amount of time that it takes
Yeah.
to do that? Download your brain, download your thinking, and then tell your story to your ideal audience in a way that is efficient for you. Because people haven't set up business to go and post on socials and record video and things. It's a byproduct. It's a means of getting to the end, and we want to make that as simple for people as we can. So that's kind of where I was. And then 6 months ago, I also I co-founded a second business with a good friend of mine, where we provide bite-sized market support to those businesses that we were saying no to. For our agencies. So people who are just starting out, startups and one-man band shows, who just want to know what to do, how to market themselves successfully. We're kind of fractional market and support for those guys where they do it themselves. So that is a very long answer, very short answer still.
There's a lot of things in between in there. So going back, and then you said you obviously you had no experience in that area, but it was video that kind of captured you to try that avenue. What was your thought process that kind of pushed that? Because obviously you said you come from no background. Cold calling, things like that, out of the blue, out of the question. So what was it about video that A, made you think about trying it in the first place, and B, kind of what sort of early traction did you see that kind of left you to carry on with that movement, I guess?
We were still doing cold calling and cold emailing, and I actually cold called Tony Smith from Smith's Toy Stores one day, and he answered, and I absolutely fluffed it because I was totally starstruck. I was like, Tony,
wrong number.
The whole script went out the window. It's like, no thanks. Blown it. Never mind. But yeah, it worked, but it was tough. It was hard going, and I didn't enjoy it. And I knew there had to be something else out there. Unfortunately, our CEO, Jimmy, had previously run a social media startup, and he was probably ahead of his time by about 4 or 5 years. And it hadn't took off. He closed it down and built the AI startup instead. So he was kind of pushing me towards, we should be doing more with video. I think we can repurpose, because repurposing is how we get efficient. And I was like, right, okay, that kind of makes sense. But as I went about it, what I realized was, you can have somebody come in and ghostwrite your text-based posts. You can have somebody come in and create images for you. You can have, the one thing that can't be faked, although kind of can now-ish, is video, right? Because it's you, it's your passion, it's your enthusiasm, it's your credibility. And if you're capable of being a little bit vulnerable, a bit transparent on that, and organic, getting yourself out there, then there's nothing that builds trust faster than video. The problem most people come to is they try and release a podcast and wonder why nobody's downloading a 30-minute podcast. And the fact of the matter is, like, people don't want to download a 30-minute podcast to start with. They want to get a minute. What's this about? There's a minute. There's on offer here. And after I've seen it 3 or 4 times, then I might download your podcast and they'll hurt forever. Then I'll love your podcast. But you've got to lead them into having that conversation. Whether the goal is to get them to watch the long form content, or it's to come and have a chat with you, whatever. And for me, I was interviewing industry experts who wanted to come on and talk about their views and opinions on things. They wanted to be thought leaders, give them airspace. And I could also learn at the same time. So I was really passionate about, I can download their thoughts and opinions, and the ones that resonate, I can implement and talk to people about, come across as a bit more of an expert than I was at the time. And it's all upskilling and learning as you go. And that's the thing that I've really found as I go forward, is like, it's fascinating just being able to tell people stories, or help them tell their own stories. It's kind of, you have to be on the sideline. It's not about me, and it's not about my business. It's about helping them be the rock stars on the stage.
Yeah.
But there are so many people out there that have that anxiety about video in the first place. It makes it really hard for people to get started, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the number one reason why most people don't do it. So say for example, a client comes to you and they've got that anxiety. They don't see, they're nervous maybe of getting their face out there, and then don't know which kind of route to take. How do you approach that?
I think, first up, if they come to me about it, then they've already kind of resigned themselves to doing it. They just need to acknowledge it. If you're adamant that you're never going to do video, you're never even going to talk to me. So that's fair. Like, it's not for everyone. And still to this day, I hate seeing myself on camera. I still hate it. Still hate the sound of my voice. And I've done hundreds of podcast episodes, hundreds of live streams. I'm on, I release a video every day on LinkedIn and YouTube and TikTok, Instagram. I'm everywhere. So it never gets removed, but it does get easier, I think, as time goes on. You feel a bit more comfortable doing it, just because you can see, once you've done it for a while, you see the results. It's absolutely worth doing. And that's the part there's a bit of that education for people, is like, look, if you're talking to me, then you've kind of resigned yourself to doing it. You just need somebody to get you over the line. And what I realised towards the back end of last year was actually they need an expert to hold their hand through that recording process. So I've now brought in a senior BBC editor who's literally qualified to do that process. She helps them beforehand settle their thoughts on what they want to talk about and have a plan. And that's more relevant for some people than others. Some people just want to kind of get on there and just do it. But then she goes in, because the other fear that people have is garbage in, garbage out. If my recording's rubbish, your outputs are going to be rubbish, Paul, and I don't want to pay for rubbish outputs through my fault. And I sit there and say, like, do you know what? Your outputs will be way better than you think they will. It's your internal, it's your imposter syndrome sat talking to you in your head. The benefits to that imposter syndrome is that it will force you to do your best work, because you're paranoid about how you'll come across. You will do once you get settled in. I think getting that first video done is the hardest part. Once they've done that first video and they've got over it a little bit, then when you do the second one, you're a little bit more confident. The third one's a little bit more confident still. Then they start to do podcasts and things, and actually it just becomes a way of marketing themselves. And it's a lot less effort than sitting writing text-based posts and things like that. It's so painful writing those things on their own, separate. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, video, it just adds a little bit of extra depth. I mean, you've got to have one, you can't have one without the other, I guess, but they definitely work well together. Yeah. So when someone comes to you, what's that entire process look like then?
So for me, they've got to be a good fit, right? The last thing I want is to do 2 or 3 episodes or 2 or 3 projects with somebody and they then feel like they've wasted their money or time. I don't want that. Like, I would rather say no to business than... Go on.
Do you get that early on? Or has there been times when you got there and thought, this isn't right? Or...
I'm learning as I go, like, as everyone is, right? Like, there are warning signs that I'm starting to pick up on now, and I call them out early. And you've got to be brave. Do you know what? I think by calling them out early, sometimes that just gets people off the fence and gets them involved in the video better as well. I tend to find, if you've got co-founders, one of them generally is very interested in doing the video. One of them is very much just being dragged along and made to do it. You've got to get that second person on board with it. And sometimes that takes a bit of work to get them going. Because if they come on, and I've had this recently, where they come in and they're just not feeling it, you can see it in the video. You can tell from the other side of things. So for me, it's kind of making sure that you're qualifying well, that this is what you want to do, and asking them if they've got a strategy for how they're going to use it on the back end as well, because so many people come to me and they've got no content strategy whatsoever. They just want to do some video, and that's fine. You can start that way, but ultimately you want to get the maximum impact out. You need to be working with the right people who can support you with that strategy too. Then it's about kind of setting expectations. A lot of people come to me and they want to know, how many leads can we generate in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? I'm like, you're coming at this from completely the wrong perspective, and I'm not going to talk to you if you're going to carry on talking about leads. I'm not about generating leads. This is brand work. It's PR. If you were promoting yourself in a white paper from if you're talking about regulated industry, for example, if you're promoting yourself in a white paper that's gone out from a registered body, you wouldn't ask those guys, how many leads is this going to generate me? You'd just love the publicity that you get from being out there in that white paper. And this is the same thing. Yes, it will generate leads, I have no doubt. But you've got to set the expectations that it's hard to determine where the leads have come from, because the likelihood of their path is they're going to watch 5 pieces of content before they convert to a longer form piece of content. Eventually they'll find their way to your website, and the website's all they'll remember. They won't remember the LinkedIn post that you did before that. But if you were to ask them, if you're on a call and you ask them, did you follow me on LinkedIn before you came to my website? Oh yeah, I've seen your video content all the time. Yeah. So you've got to do that bit of digging if you want to attribute it correctly, but it's not always possible. But what I say to people is, if you're using video, what you should see If your content's doing the job right, you should be educating your audience. So the ones that come to you will come in better qualified, which means your pipeline will be shorter, should be shorter. Eventually it will be shorter. The people who talk to you will be less likely to be the wrong, bad fit clients.
Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10, I see people get bad fit clients on calls and waste a lot of time talking to people who will never ever convert. And the reason they do that is because they just can't find the information they want out there on the internet anywhere. So they want to do their research. Or you just haven't answered the right questions for your audience. You've answered the questions you think you need to answer. So I'm always a big fan of, if you get bad fit clients, you need to understand why they ended up with you. What did they misunderstand? What was it genuinely them, or was it something you just weren't doing right, or you weren't clear enough, or you haven't promoted enough that you don't do? So I talk to people a lot about, when you're on video, you should be telling them as much about what you do, but also what you don't do. What do we not do? I don't do leads. Don't come to me if you want to talk about leads. If you can get past that and we can talk about how you want to improve your brand, happy to have the conversation. If you want me to generate leads in 30 days, I'm not interested. I could say yes to that all day long, but I'd ruin my reputation, because it's incredibly, get a website built. How many leads is the website going to drive me? I don't know. Depends on your messaging, your brand, your product, your services, your price point, how you convert people, your sales process, your funnel, your nurture sequences. There's so many things that pile on the back of that it's really hard to say what the impact is. But if you talk about it from a brand perspective, that can be measured. You can work on that. And then the last thing is the likelihood to convert at the end of the process, because they've come to you better qualified and they're a better fit. Your conversion rate should be much higher, because you've educated your audience. You've told them what you're about, what you're not about, what you do, and also come to see you as a bit of an expert if you're doing the things right. If you want to change people's beliefs about what their ingrained beliefs are, it's really hard to change that. Like if you put somebody at gunpoint and said, you've got to believe that reindeer can fly, and I'm going to hold a gun to your head, and if you don't believe that reindeer can fly, and I genuinely believe that reindeer can fly, I'm going to shoot you. It's impossible. Like, people can't change their opinion like that. You can't force someone. What you can do, and this is, if you listen to Stephen Bartlett's book, the most recent audio book, is brilliant, and it discusses this in great detail. He talks about how if people align with 90% of what you say, then on the 10% that you disagree with them, they'll listen to you and start to question their own thoughts. But they've got to agree with you on 90% first.
Yeah.
If you look across your whole target audience, it's not going to be everybody that agrees with that. They might be a good fit within that target audience, but how many of those align with you personally? They're the ones who are going to be a really good fit for what you do. And by using video, you'll get them to wake up, start taking notice, and land at your door. So that's the kind of process that we go through is, what strategy have you got? How are you going to use this? Are you a good fit? Let's get it recorded. Let's get it repurposed, get you back over to it. What do you think of it? Is there any more support we can give you at this point? And then how do we then make this a regular thing going forwards? Because you're going to need fresh content. If you're going to be doing video, you can't let it go stale. Some stuff's evergreen, some stuff's a one-off shot. How do you mix and match all of that going forwards? And also, a lot of people are really uncomfortable, like you said, with even just writing their own posts that accompany that video. So can we support you with the ghostwriting? And again, that's got to be, do we understand your industry enough to be able to confidently say yes?
Yeah.
Do we align with you well enough to be able to say yes? And if so, then we'll consider it. But it's got to be, too many people are hooked on, they're a good fit, therefore we must do business.
Yeah.
There's good fits within good fit.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the leads conversation, because I've had customers come to me and they say, we want leads. What they're really saying, like you say, they want more attention, they want more eyes on their business. But the only way that they can get that across that point initially is quickly just say, we want more leads. But it's a lot more broader than what it is they're actually looking for.
Yeah.
Right. So no doubt you'll work with businesses all different sizes. Say, for example, so you've got a small business owner, you can see the potential in using video, but just hasn't basically got the time to, or they think they haven't got the time to do it. What would your advice be to them? And surely there's tips to kind of make that process go a little easier and quicker, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, are we talking about them doing it themselves here, right? So if they want to get involved in video, they're going to try and do it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it in
Because
many different ways because obviously, without a doubt, video is becoming more and more popular. And there's a reason behind that because it does
yeah,
have an impact. So obviously, more and more people are becoming savvy to right. I want to get involved in this, but how do we go about that when we just don't have the time to do it?
yeah. I think so. If you're a business owner, you want to do more with video yourself. The first things I would be considering are get set up with the right technology to support what you want to do. For me, as an ADHD business owner, I really struggle with video editing on standard media editing platforms like iMovie and things like that. Other media
Yeah,
editing platforms are available. I struggle with it because I watch the clip and I get involved in the clip, and I forget that I need to note down the time that they started talking. Then I have to rewind back. Before I know it, I used to spend 20 hours a week clipping up a 30-minute podcast because it was just horrendous. And I came across, and there's a few other tools that do similar now, but none in my opinion that are quite as good. I came across Descript. And Descript is a video editing platform that takes your video, transcribes it down into text, and then you edit the text as if it was a Word document. And as you delete paragraphs from your text, it deletes the accompanying video and audio. If you want to move things about, it moves the video and the audio with it. And it's pretty powerful around the edges as well. So it will also allow you to, add transitions across scenes, and you can get really into the power of it. You can be really simple. It's got AI in there, so you can ask it to come up with chapter markers and titles for your chapters, for your video, all those sorts of things. Likewise, in terms of if you're posting every day, like it's going to sap most of your time. You're much better doing it as a block, in which case use a scheduling tool like Social B. Doesn't break the bank. It's pretty simple to use, but it's really powerful when you need it to be as well. So support yourself with the right technology. Don't get lost in what a lot of people get lost in is doing too much at once. So they try and do too much at once. They do it for a while and then realise that they haven't actually spent the time on the business that they should have because they've gotten lost in this white rabbit hole. And then they end up stop doing it because they have to get back to running their business, and that's too much hard work. So bite off small chunks, go after one channel at a time, build yourself out a couple of days a week, just build up enough content for a few weeks at a time, see how it goes, and then ask yourself, what more could we be doing with this, and what time have I got to do it? Certainly if you're at that point before you're ready to outsource it to somebody else and get it off your desk, you need to really manage that time. But if you think you've got a piece of video that's aligned with your content strategy for this month, you then get the transcript from that. That transcript then becomes your newsletter article for your newsletter base this month. It becomes your blog for LinkedIn this month and for your website. It then becomes smaller posts for your daily posting. And all of that is intertwined because it's about the same topic as what you were talking on the main video. So as long as that main video is fairly aligned in themes, then you've now created a really nicely themed chunk of content for the whole month, which makes you look really professional and much bigger than you are. I just think right technology, the right mindset, and be constantly working towards making it more efficient. What can you automate that's repetitive? Get rid of the automated stuff. Get it onto AI's plate, not your plate.
Yeah.
And when you can outsource, and yes, I am biased, but when you can outsource, regardless of which chunks of that it is, get it off your plate, because you set out to be a business owner in the industry that you're in, not a social media expert. There are people that will make much shorter work of it than what you do, but granted, you need to get your revenue to that point in the first place.
Yeah.
I'm at a point now where I can say to my clients, give me 30 to 60 minutes a month of your time in terms of recording and a bit of backwards and forwards on the email to how we're going to use that content. And that's it. You don't need to talk to me the rest of the month. You just get on with running your business. Yeah. Isn't that peace of mind worth your time and money? And like generally for the businesses that have the money, it's an easy conversation. I don't have many people that, it's not about the money at that point. It's about just make sure you've got the right partner. So if you are going to outsource, you make sure that it's not a race to the bottom. A lot of people worry about that kind of, I must get somebody from, another country for $5 an hour. Yeah, they're $5 an hour for a reason. And some of them are bloody good at what they do. but you're going to have to go through some to find those people. And
Yeah.
when you do go that route, hang on to them, because they are fantastic, because you're putting food on their plates and, you know, helping them live much better life than they would otherwise. But if you want to bypass all of that, then you should be thinking about onshore. But that is that much more expensive again. So it's that balance between the two, I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you got the money, it's definitely a no-brainer kind of outsourcing that to like people like yourselves. If you haven't got it, it's a funny thing with content, because the more you do of it, the more ammo you have to kind of put out there, and it gets a lot easier because you are continuously putting things out. You've got different talking points that you can kind of grab on there. Really, you talked a little bit about automation. What sort of tools, or what are you using to automate within video?
Hands on heart, again, it tends to be pretty simple, right? So,
Yeah.
like, everybody's going to roll their eyes, but ChatGPT is great at some of these things. It's terrible at others. Don't ask it to create your social media posts, please, people. Don't do that. It's awful at that. But it can create a baseline, especially when people leave the prompt in the bottom and stuff. Like, I love it when people do that. And this is a post that will resonate with your audience. And delete it. But it's a good start point, right? Like, a lot of people tell me, like, they sat at the keyboard, they've got writer's block. So ask GPT to come up with some ideas, but don't just copy and paste it. Like, you've got to have that human element over the top. Some things that I'm doing at the moment is kind of ChatGPT is really good at analysing transcripts for quotes. So, you know, find in this episode a minimum of 15 quotes that are succinct and are educational, promotional, motivational, enthusiastic sounding, all those sorts of things that you think your audience would want to hear, and output it in a table. And people don't even realise you can output in tables on ChatGPT, right? So copy and paste that table. You can go into Canva where you've got a template pre-set up, and you can bulk add your quotes into your standard templates. So before you know it, you've got 30 design outputs of quotes that you've had. I've recently added a step in between where I add it to Excel and then delete the crap quotes, because some of them are just like, it doesn't. Why is it put that in there? Like, so you don't want to be deleting that every time you put that into Canva, but then copy and paste that into Canva, generate those images, and then you can go through. And do you know what? You can even then take those images and animate them in Canva and output them as MP4s or GIFs. And actually, there's 3 different variations of the same content. You can post it as an image, post it as a GIF, post it as an MP4, and it looks really different in the feed. When you animate the quotes, everybody puts motivational quotes up. But if you put a quote up that's actually animated and it repeats that animation, it's really eye-catching. Then you can add it to your featured section on your LinkedIn profile, and all of a sudden you've got an animated GIF in your featured section that flashes up and just catches people's eyes. And for me, it's all about maintaining credibility and becoming a thought leader, but doing it in a way that's different at the same time, so you stand out from what everybody else is doing. If you're finding video uncomfortable, or you're finding whatever you're doing uncomfortable, it's probably because all of your competition find it uncomfortable as well. Lean into it. Everybody else will give up. If you don't, you'll be the one that got away with it and did it, and you'll stand out from the crowd.
Yeah. What do you say then to kind of making content? Because obviously you've got to make content to the people that are right for your business. Usually that means the ones that can afford your business. So how do you, especially if someone's a little too nervous or shy about making content around video anyway, how do you get them to make sure that their voice is resonating with their ideal client, specifically the ones that can, you can charge for it?
Ask them.
Does that make sense?
First of all, yeah. Ask them. So everybody who gets into business gets into business usually because they've worked in that industry and the impact on that. They probably have connections in that space. So build your first set of content based on your hypothesis, and ask somebody who's a friendly face what you may set the right tone. Does it come across right? Refuse the temptation to sell to them. Right, like you've got to have 1 or 2 people. The selling will happen regard about it. The impact is they'll become aware of you when the time's right. They will naturally buy from you anyway if you're a good fit and you solve their problem. So don't worry about the sell. That's but it's really tempting, especially in that early doors where you haven't got much revenue in. And the other thing is trial and experiment. Like, don't be afraid to fail with it. I try new stuff all the time. Some of it works, some of it doesn't, some of it sometimes does, sometimes it doesn't. Like, people worry about playing with the LinkedIn algorithm and things like that, and I just think, do you know what, be you and address it to the right audience. But there's a good point that you made, Leeroy, is your ideal target audience, and I don't think a lot of people do the right amount of research on who that is.
Yeah,
because it's really
100%.
hard to figure out what I need to ask. Like, what do I need to understand and why? Some people go to the depths of what TV programs would they like to watch? Why would I need to know that? Well, because when you're talking on your video, you might want to reference something, like I might want to talk about the X-Files or Star Wars because that resonates with other books my age who are primarily my customers. Not all of them. So there are some ladies out there. I'm working with some female clients as well, but they're a different audience altogether. So I need to know what they're like, so that when I'm talking, I can resonate with them as well. So it's about drilling down into your target persona a lot more, so that you just understand it. It's not about having it to the side of the screen and going, "Oh, must talk about Star Wars today." That's what I'm. It's about knowing it, so that when you create it, it's just naturally there. But also, don't make the mistake. A lot of my clients sell to business rather than individuals. So if you're selling to an individual, it's fine. You can identify that persona. That's pretty easy to do. When you're selling to a business, you kind of need two streams of content. One is to show that you're an expert to the people who are going to use your service or products directly. The other is to influence the budget holders and the stakeholders who make the decision whether to bring you in or not. And you need both of those. And people tend to make this content because this is easy, because I'm this person and I wanted to impact these people, so I can talk to them very easily. But actually talking to these people over here, these stakeholders, that's much harder to do. And what are they interested in? Because it's absolutely not the same things. That's my advice, is just kind of consider who your audience is and make sure you're hitting everyone you need to hit at some point.
Yeah. It's funny, it's a very good point, that, and it's a point that many people around, pushing content don't mention. You do need to aim it at both, because, you are influencing two different angles, and you can get on board the people that is your ideal customer. But if if they pass on the message of, oh, this is what we need, it's like Chinese whispers in a sense. So you've got to make sure you've got both sides on board. Two good shows, by the way.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I've just recently done some outreach where I asked people to reply back, are you Star Wars or Star Trek? If you're interested,
really,
tell me if you're Star Wars or Team Star Trek. And it's just about having a laugh sometimes. It's about being different, right? It resonates with the right people, and you can have a good laugh while you're doing it. That for me is like, there's not many people come on my inbox who are after a laugh. Yeah, I just think, well, why is it got to be boring? Like, we can have a laugh and be professional at the same time.
Yeah. It's just being comfortable with yourself as well, I think, a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. So remove people that are kind of anxious about it, doing video and so forth. Mm-hmm. Remove that element. Is there any type of person or industry or whatever that you think video is not suitable for, or is it accessible for everyone?
I think I genuinely believe it's accessible for everyone. It is just about how you approach doing it. So if you're a charity, you're absolutely not going to approach it in the same way that an enterprise account is going to approach it. And certainly not the same way a senior consultant who's gone freelance is going to approach it. It's horses for courses, and it's got to be, when I talk about strategy, like, strategy doesn't have to be a big scary thing either. Everybody thinks, ooh, and I certainly did. Even when I got involved and I started building the business, I was like, I'm not a strategy person, really. I'm a doer. I like to do things. I like to get things off people plate, execute, and get it done like nobody else can. And I still maintain that's my core. But actually, when I've talked to people, I've got a partner who's a marketing director, and he works fractional senior marketing. And he was like, Paul, what you've just told me when we had that conversation there, that you've just built a strategy. Like, people think it's a lot more complicated than it needs to be. It's just a case of getting out of your own head and having that strategy there. So, if you're an enterprise business, for me, your senior leadership team are the best salespeople you've got, but they're the most time poor. So get the video done with them, and then have your junior salespeople utilize that video to lend their credibility and experience and become, increase their visibility to the target audience. You get noticed because this your CEO is a big player in the industry. Well, now I'm leveraging their thoughts and opinions to get into your inbox. If you're a charity, you probably want to have more partnership materials on there. And here's some examples of how we're doing things well, and talk about where we've made a difference and those sorts of things. Whereas if you're an individual business owner, then you want to have a mix of lots of different things in there. You want some of your background and experience and credibility and what makes me the expert in your eyes. But then you also want to have bits about what sort of problems do we solve. A lot of people are in consultancy. It's a really hard sell. Tell us your problems and we'll fix them. Well, I don't want to tell you my problems because you're a stranger. So you tell me what problems you fix and we'll tell you whether we need them fixing.
Yeah.
But I fix a lot of problems. Wouldn't know where to start. So if you can give me an idea, I don't want to give you an idea. Who are you? Go away. And it's a really, really tough conversation, but there's a lot of value in smaller independent consultants out there. So by them being able to go, well, we've worked with this, we've done that, we've done this, and actually here's my opinions on a boatload of other topics. People can then go, oh, right, now I get where this person sits, and I know when I would come to them now. And actually this problem over here probably sits in their space and we can work with them. So, people tend to think of video as being them selling themselves. Actually, what you're really doing is you're just giving more research opportunity to your ideal clients, so they can better qualify you in or out of different topics, and you're doing them a favor, right? You're not getting in their face. Like, people are worried, oh, I'm going to just be all over the internet and all over their feed, and they're just going to hate seeing me all the time. Unless you're me, because I get in people's feed all the damn time, but that's intentional, right? But for a lot of people, it is just acknowledging that it's not a bad thing that you're trying to do. As long as you come at it with the right mindset, you're adding value to them. Hopefully, you're helping them for free to start with, giving them some things that they can try where they don't need your skill set. And 9 times out of 10, people are going to look at that and go, do you know what? I can't be bothered with that. Can we just pay someone to do it? And look, he does it, or that she does it, and let's get her in and solve the problem.
Yeah. No, it's a very, very good point. Do you think, especially like the C-suite and stuff, that they just don't see the value in it sometimes, and it's about getting that message across that yes, this does work, and here's why it does?
I think it probably takes a bit of. It depends on, largely depends on the generational divide, I think. Yeah. So you've got a lot of older senior leaders in businesses who are of a time when video didn't really exist, and who can blame them, because even 5-10 years ago it wasn't a thing. But I can guarantee one of the first things they do on a morning when they get to their desk is they sit and open LinkedIn and scroll through their feed. So it's just hard for them to admit it or see it sometimes. Where I tend to come at it is, let's do something and demonstrate that it works. Let's just get something out there. You'll see the value from it. Let's do it for a while. If you're not seeing the results, then we call it a day. Because I don't want to work with clients that aren't seeing the results, because then that doesn't reflect well on them. So either we've come at it from the wrong angle, or it's just not working for their audience in the way we hoped it would. But I do think it's probably that layer of leadership down from the C-suite that need to be the stakeholders for this, because they'll both see the value in it. They'll know that they're getting stuff off their desk and out of their hands that they don't have to be responsible for, and actually feeding their sales team or their marketing team with stuff that's really good quality content that's gonna make the machine just much more oiled and efficient. I think it's largely about price point when you get to that point. And it's not to say that you can't charge big money for video and do an extremely good job of it, but it's much easier to justify. And in this day and age, what people don't want to see hugely polished videos a lot of the time. They just want to know who it is they're buying from. Big businesses tend to sit behind their big company brand and assume that people want to work with them because they're big company brand, but actually it can be very cold and off-putting for people.
No one gives a damn about a logo, do they?
No.
They want that connection, definitely.
I think, like, people are like, oh, I'm uncomfortable being on video. Can you do something where, like, I'm not actually, you record my voice and we'll do something audio and we'll do, some graphics and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you can, but I want you to have your picture on that screen when you're doing that. So, like, your avatar, your headshot has to be on that screen, because otherwise you're just not resonating with them. It's like if you put a testimonial on LinkedIn, right? Like, I do testimonial. I get a lot of testimonials. And in the profile, it's great because it's got their little picture beside the words, because their profile's linked to it. If you just take those words and put them on a Canva graphic, it looks rubbish, because there's no weight behind the words. You've got to have the face attached with the words. And for me, that is why video, a picture speaks 1,000 words. Video does that at 30 frames per second.
Good quote, that.
Build it before you need it. There's another one.
Yeah, no. There's a couple of more questions then, because appreciate it coming close to the end of the time. First one is, what's an ideal time frame to work with a client for that has never used video before?
I always pushed for... I like to work with people long term, just because the longer I'm working with them, the more I can understand their audience, their business, and what they want. And we can systemize that and get it much more refined to what they need. But for anybody, regardless of whether you're going to work with us or anybody else, it is easily 6 to 9 months before you start to see consistent results. Yeah. You're not just putting an advert out there, you're building a brand, whether it's a personal brand, whether it's a joint personal business brand. It don't make any difference. You've got to educate your audience first. They've got to see you half a dozen times in the feed. And the likelihood is that only 10% of your audience see any single post that you put out, max.
Yeah.
So you might have to repeat the same message 10 times to get across your entire audience once. And then you've got to do that 5 or 6 times before they'll even consider looking at anything more. So yeah, just consider that kind of 6 to 9 months is about what I would say. You will get wins within that, though. You will get wins within that, but that is right place, right time. More about serendipity rather than intent. And I'd always be cautious of any wins within that. Check for red herrings, because they might have took half your message, not really fully educated yet, and they turn out to be a bad fit client. And I've seen that a few times. So just, if you do get any wins that come, I saw your video on LinkedIn the other day. We only put one video out. Wow, this is really good result. Don't get too excited, because the likelihood is they don't really understand you yet.
Yeah.
Make sure you qualify those people properly if you do get any through.
Yeah. No, I think with anything you do, you've got to be consistent over time. Otherwise, you can't fully analyse the results from it. It's, you've got to get rid of this mentality of quick wins, I guess, really. So
I can understand it as well, because it's hard. Like everybody, you need revenue in the bank to pay for the market, and and day by day, people deprioritize the long term stuff for the quick wins. But you've got to have that as part of your routine. I think when it's a choice of whether you do it or not, you'll choose not to do it. When it becomes part of your routine, it's just accepted and it'll carry on. It'll be consistent.
Yeah, I think more from the business owner's perspective than, because you can see it from an employee's perspective. They want quick wins for the company, but from a business owner or the C-suite, they should be looking more at the long term, really. Right, I'm appreciative of your time. So one final question, right? How do you avoid shiny object syndrome then, if you've got ADHD?
I embrace them. I embrace them. Work in progress. I would never say I've cracked it fully, but I'm a lot better with it than I ever used to be. ADHD is absolutely a superpower. But yeah, you've got to be able to organise it. So I use what I call the 2 diary approach. I have one diary where every task or action or piece of technology that I want to look at gets written in my head. Yeah. I don't have to worry about remembering it then, because I also have a terrible short-term memory. So unless I write it down, it don't get done. When I'm networking with people, if I'm going to introduce them to someone, I write it in the diary. And then each day I have a daily diary, and I take, a manageable chunk of those things that I've written in the big diary. That's my to-do list for today, with a bit of breathing space in there, so that if something unknown comes in, then I can deal with that on the fly if I want to. Yeah. But you've got to really get You've got to hold yourself accountable to make sure it goes in the diary before you act on it. And then you can look at it in line with everything else that you need to achieve today and go, do you know what? I really want to do this, but realistically, it's not paying the bills. So let's put it to one side and focus on the things that are going to drive the revenue for us. And then when they're done, then we can spend some time on it. But sometimes that still gets the better of me, and I get a new piece of technology in and I'm sat till 2:00 in the morning, and it's also my turn to look after the 6-month-old baby. So I'm like up at 3:30 as well. And I'm like, why did I do that to myself? But sometimes I've just got to embrace it and get out my system as well. It's fun.
No, it's knowing yourself, I guess, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Look, Paul, thank you so much. I appreciate that. For anyone, because this is going out on LinkedIn, but for anyone, it'll also be going out on YouTube and Spotify and whatnot. So for anyone that's not on LinkedIn, how can they get a hold of you?
You can reach out to me via email. It's paul@javelincontent.com. More than happy to have a chat with folks. Or to be honest, if you search Paul Banks on LinkedIn, there is only one Paul Banks that will come up. I've made sure of it. You can also jump on our YouTube channel @Javelin Content. That's our handle on YouTube. So we're pretty much everywhere. But yeah, looking forward to having conversations with anyone who wants. It's not about becoming my client. Don't think it's about that. If you just want some advice, bit of thought leadership on video and how you can use it, more than happy to have that conversation and just point you in the right direction.
Cool. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
No problem at all.